Hello everyone, welcome back to Arc Scorched Earth. I am Winslow, and today we will tell the story of John Dahkeya. This is the final set of Explorer Notes and Lore in Arc Scorched Earth. John was an outlaw from the Texas and Arizona region of North America, circa the 19th century, probably closer to about 1880. John was at least part Apache Native American. He found himself awake on the Ark, naked and with the implant in his arm, not knowing where he was. In only a few weeks after waking up, he was already robbing people at gunpoint, purely out of old habits. He quickly assembled a crew, and after a bit of terror, he heard about a group gathering in the southeast. They went to investigate. When they approached the settlement, they noticed no real guards or patrol. The people were friendly and would shoot a smile before a bullet. This was definitely not the same type of people he'd dealt with back home. He'd heard about their leader Raia, and wanted to go find her while his men spread out to find where the supplies were stored. Almost immediately upon meeting her, he felt changed. He was reminded that here he was not a wanted man. There were no posters plastered on the wanted board with his face, no bounties for his capture. Here, in this new land, he could really be any type of man that he wanted. Did he still want to be an outlaw, or would the people here call him sheriff? He offered his services to Raia as lawman, guardian, and protector. Part of his crew didn't appreciate his decision, but he reminded them with a bullet that it wasn't their decision to make. He began working with Raia and Garisha to form a militia. Through patience and persistence, he helped to train the militia in firearms and basic tactics, though most of them were pretty green or preferred spears to guns. The first real test was against a thorny dragon that surprised some of the foragers from the settlement, but they quickly got everyone to safety. John said he'd never been thanked so much in his entire life, and he had no idea how to respond to it. After a time, the militia became more and more competent, and one day on patrol, John saw a pair of mantises. One was holding a pickaxe like a person would. While one of the group thought this to be curious, John was concerned that this might be a sign of problems on the horizon. Shortly after, Garisha's engineers had found sabotage at the irrigation pipes just outside of town. As the engineers went to investigate and repair, they were ambushed by a whole group of mantis. While the militia drove them off, they were unable to save the engineers. John felt as if it was a trap laid for them by the bugs, draw the people out and pick them off. He was reminded of old stories from his youth, Big Owl and Coyote. Big Owl was more fearsome, but Coyote was far more dangerous to man and beast alike because he was a trickster. Remember that part in Raia's story when the merchant caravan arrived with all of the metal? Well, Raia was safe because of John's bravery. The caravan wanted to hold Raia ransom, and that allowed John enough time to pick them off one by one with the rifle. One remaining merchant attempted to surrender, but his lawman executed him on the spot to send a message to any other raiders in the surrounding lands. Raia was very upset at this, but John had to be hard with her. After their altercation, he agreed to teach her how to shoot so she could defend herself. She was so dissatisfied with how others defended her. He started training her 3 days a week. John admired how stubborn and determined Raia was at learning how to use a rifle. He referred to her as the first dead-eye Egyptian priestess that the world had ever seen. After months of practice, he was proud of how competent she had become. He had always expected there would be more trouble from the mantises, but never quite like what actually happened. They returned as a horde, surrounding the town. The attack was more coordinated than he'd ever seen from either man or beast. It took nearly half a day to drive them off, and after the battle was done, he decided it was time to track them down and find out where they were coming from. A relatively new addition to the town, Sasha, was a Russian who showed up at the town gates about a month before. She was a welcome addition to the militia and traveled with John on the Mantis Hunt. Sasha knew how to make bombs more powerful than dynamite, and John knew they couldn't take on the horde with regular guns. There were just too many of them. They would be quickly overwhelmed. The caverns that the Mantis had colonized were full of sulfur, and the group intended to plant bombs strategically throughout the tunnels. He didn't remember much after the cavern assault. He lost half of his men, and after the explosives were blown, a remaining mantis almost skewered him as he pushed Sasha out of the way. He was taken back to Nosti and woke up to Raia tending to his wounds. He was very glad to see her face first when he woke up. While he was stuck in his room, wounds healing and in the constant care of Raia, he began to feel at home with her. It was the first time since childhood he felt, well, at home. After his recovery and after many months of pleasant, quiet days, one of the town's hunting parties went missing. When they tracked them down, the scene was bizarre. There weren't really animal tracks or footprints beyond what had been for the hunting party. There were strange scorch marks in the sandstone and burned trees. John wondered if some of the local raiders were experimenting with new toys. His group had tracked down the culprit and had their first encounter with a wyvern, as one of the men called it. John described it as a big, mean son of a gun, with wings like a bat and the head like a lizard that spat fire. They proved that enough bullets would kill the beast, but he was worried because in all of his time here, no one had ever made mention of these beasts. Had they traveled from some distant land? Where did they come from? The whole situation made him very uneasy. The villagers and travelers around Nosti started noticing more and more wyverns flying around in the distant mountains. They didn't just spit fire. Some threw out bolts of lightning, and some spat out acid. This was also when the obelisks began to hum. He was constantly worried about what was next, while Raia and the villagers prayed to the obelisks. Between the wyverns, the obelisks, and the mantises, he felt like they were in immediate danger. He vowed to protect Raia, the villagers, and Nosti by any means necessary. Shortly after that, the obelisks flashed bright and the earth began to swallow up Nosti. John was able to jump on one of their saber cats and managed to grab Raia as the streets and buildings crumbled. They jumped from rooftop to rooftop, making it to safety. They were the only survivors of the destruction of Nosti. He had no idea how to console Raia after the loss of the town. She was bereft with grief. John was determined to survive, though. The cat helped protect them, they gathered food and water, and they started to track down some of the hunting parties to see if they could regroup with some other survivors. They made it to a nearby town just as more wyverns were burning and sundering everything. Buildings were knocked down and people were dying. They managed to hide in a large circular building while the wyverns were circling overhead. After nearly a week, when their supplies were almost out, John left Raia with the cat and went to draw the wyverns away. He hoped that she would at least be able to make it out to safety, while he provided a distraction. He felt she had more to offer the world, and it would be selfish to keep her to himself. This was the last entry from John. Presumably, this is when he died, and Raia fled with their cat. This concludes the lore stories for Scorched Earth. With that, I will wrap things up here and finish off some basic tasks around the base before I go for the Manticore. I should have that ready in the next few days, and then we can make our way to Aberration. I want to thank you for watching, and if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, please don't hesitate to leave them down below or contact me by any of the social media links provided. Take care, and we'll catch up next time. Bye.